that's a triple play. New episodes, I couldn't wait. Yeah. Open your mind at the first gate. Press play, no need to debate. AoA, check me out. Look, plugged in, you can catch the hype. Golden Dawn, how we follow the light. Anime like life, married to it, my wife.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages? Welcome back to the AoA show. I'm your host, as always, Ian, along with my boy Isaiah.
Yo, 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 what's up?
And today we're here to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen Episode 4. So for those of you who've been following us for a little, you'll know that last week we posted a video on our reaction to the first 3 episodes, our first impressions, and we liked it, honestly. If you listen to that episode, we have a lot of praise to give the show, and we're excited to see where it's going. So in lieu of that, and because people wanted to see more, we said, why not give the fans what they want here? And we are here today to talk about our thoughts on the 4th episode. So in this one, we had a introduction of a couple new things. So they introduced the concept of windows, which I thought was funny. Interesting name, but I thought that was interesting because there are people that can see curses but can't perform jujutsu, which is kind of interesting as well. And it seemed as if their butler-style dude that was sending them on that mission was one of those people, or at least was cognizant of the fact that they exist. And so our squad is sent to, you know, this building or this school or whatever it is, detention center, to deal with this womb, I guess, as it were, right? I think the name of the episode was The Womb Must Die or something like that. Something like that. So we don't get to see Gojo at all, which is kind of depressing. We see him in just like one scene. But it makes sense, right? He's pulling like the Kakashi thing again, where it's like he's late or he's like he had something to do or whatever. Like he can't be bothered with this kind of thing, even though we're going to see like one of the highest ranking possible curses in this building. So the kids are off to do their own thing. That is the plot. Did we have any thoughts going into it?
I liked it all in all. There was just a couple, like 2 things that kind of stuck out to me as like, you know, like like very typical shonen anime that, like, to be honest, I'm kind of over at this point. But all in all, it was good. I think, excuse me, the things like, so at the very start when he's like, when they're explaining what windows are and they're explaining the whole, basically the rundown of what this mission is that they sent them there for. Itadori, of course, is the only one who is like, wait, I don't know what you guys are talking about. What's going on? And he's like, oh, cool, that's fine. Let me take the next 10 minutes then and break down how our system works. And I always appreciate it when anime can like work that exposition into the movement of the story and not like stop the story and everything going on to literally show you a flow chart of like how everything's working. So when anime do just sort of, you know, cash it, like, all right, whatever, here it is. It's just like, all right, like, I don't know. It feels a little like undermining of my intelligence. It's like, if you just like worked that into the, like, I would have picked it up. I didn't need you to like, you know, teacher on the chalkboard, like hand fisted to me, but whatever. I guess like you got to it's got to happen.
And to be fair, it wasn't too long.
No, it wasn't too long. But it did still like rub me the wrong way. And then the only other thing is just the idea that they're like, okay, so the whole deal with Goro or Gojo being there is that like really he wasn't supposed to, or it's like not typical for somebody of his level or his grade to like be hanging out with like young newbie sorcerers, and like he's got to go off and do his own thing. But like the mission that they sent them on is like they were literally like, yeah, if you see this thing, like just run, don't even fight it. And it's like I gotta argue then, like, why are you sending them in the first place? Because this thing isn't like you will see it from a mile away, and then like we have 48 hours to come up with a plan, and like, you know, like, all right, so do we engage from this side? Like, should we call, like, he was literally on top of them in a second flat and completely split them up in 5 seconds. And I'm like, this is not like the level of a threat that like you send 3, like, this is like first graders. You literally sent 3 first graders to deal with, you know, a college level problem. And I'm like, if Goro was not to be in the first 3 episodes, he should have been here. Like, this was the place to send him with the new kids, because they all could have died and should have died had it not been for Sukuna.
Yeah.
And that whole thing, which that part of the episode I did actually really like, and I think the conflict there is interesting because it up until the beginning, the first 3 episodes kind of made me feel. I mean, I knew this was going to change, but like it was weird how quickly, given Sukuna's backstory and like what you learned of him, how quickly they were like, Itadori was like, yeah, no, it's cool. I got him under wraps. So don't worry, he's not gonna be a prop. And it's like, really? Because they said he's like the strongest nigga like in this entire world, and you just like you got him hand fisted, like put on a leash. And so now to see that there's a little bit of play here, and it's like, oh, to see that conflict like sort of butt heads was pretty cool. But I think those were my two main gripes. Other than that, I pretty much enjoyed it. Yeah,
no, that's fair, and I totally understand your point. I have to say, like, it wasn't too long, like I said, so it wasn't, and I understand where you're coming from. I weirdly, to provide a contrasting opinion, so long as they don't overdo it, kind of enjoy that in a weird way, because I feel like it's like, all right, here we go. This is it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, teach me. Like, this is it. Like, here we are. Now we're jumping into, like, what this power thing means, like, whether it's your nen, it's your chakra, it's whatever, right? And it's like, this is how they're going to set up the show. So long as they don't, like, murder you with it, you know what I mean, then like it's okay. But I think it's finding that fine line, having it where it's like we don't devote an entire episode to this and we're still able to interweave this into the plot, and have you fully understand it but not be like have to pause on everything you're doing, but also not trying to interweave it so tightly that you don't even see it, like it just passes you by and then you're just left asking questions, you know what I mean? Because at least it sets up where this curse is, you know what I mean, in the grand scheme of things. So again, and especially though after showing them that flow chart, the lesson, it is ironic that they send them in there. It's you know what I mean, and it's like it only makes sense, right? Because we're gonna have to like involve some like awakening moment where it's like pushed to the brink. So that's interesting. I will say, rest in peace to that dog. Is he coming back?
Well, I think to be honest, I think they're like interchangeable. Like I don't think there's like one, because like literally the second that happens and he drops into the other corridor, he just like summons another dog. And like, I think there's just like this pack of them, and they like once they die, they just it's like a video game. Like they die, they just go back, and he can just bring them out whenever. Because I think they're literally like lost souls of like deep like
that would make sense. I mean? Yeah.
Because otherwise, like how would you?
Yeah, like, no, it makes sense. I just because the first episode, or first or second or whatever, when we're introduced to Fuji, and he has two dogs with him, and one of them's got the white coat, one of them's got the black coat. So the one with the white coat dies, and he summons the one with the black coat. So I'm like, is the one with the white coat like perma dead? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm assuming you're correct.
I think it's like, like I don't know if it's just those two, or maybe if there's more, but I think it's like one can be out until it dies, and then like it dies, it like goes into this respawn. I don't really know. I'm just going off the assumption that like it'd be weird to like give the dogs even the level of attention that they have been given if like they're just gonna get one shotted.
Sure,
like, who cares at that point? But I'm assuming that like there's some sort of like way to recycle them and bring them back.
No, it makes sense. I hope you're right, because for me, even that small moment kind of hit for me that I was like, oh no, because they were like, oh, it's a good boy, they were pumping him up, and then decapitated or whatever. And I'm like, no, why, no? But yeah, they weren't afraid. Like if they don't respawn, that's interesting that they were willing to throw that punch and not hold back. Yeah, and just rip that dog a new one, quite literally. I also think it's interesting, too, I mean, which is stereotypical of your protagonist versus his, rival / comrade who has, like, the more, like, calm, cool, collected, thing where it's like there's always this gripe, right, where it's like there's always this argument that gets purveyed. In some way or another, it always manifests itself. And in this show, it's like they see the guy who is effectively split in half, and Itadori is like, we have to bring this body out, right? Like, his mother or guardian, whatever, was sulking outside. Like, we can't just say he's dead and then not show a body. His face is okay. And then, Fuji is basically like, bro, I wasn't even going to save this guy anyway. It's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, first of all, if you read the manual before we went on this mission, because everyone gets briefed on this, it's like, this guy hit another guy, and it's like more of this like not even tough love, I would say, because there is no love, it's just tough, this like tough luck type thing where it's I'm not going to save him, he doesn't deserve my to be saved by me or us, like we're not going to risk this for someone. But then Itadori comes back at him when they're arguing with the kind of the showstopper line where he's like, then why'd you save me, right? Because he again has the strongest demon within, or curse within him, Fuji really can't say anything about that. He's like kind of stopped dead in his tracks before Kabara comes and breaks the whole thing up. So that was an interesting thing to see, like where that goes. And I'm assuming through Itadori's like overwhelming persistence and strength of will, he will, I would assume, probably mold Fuji, or rather change his perspective on, that maybe will, maybe won't. But it's good to have like that balancing act, I guess, between the two of them, because Itadori is, not 2 seconds later we're confronted by the special grade demon or curse, whatever it was, who's easily able to manhandle all three of them. So it's like, dude, when were you planning on bringing that body out?
Yeah, that's my thing, is like, don't get me wrong, again, Itadori he's that protagonist. Sure. He fits in that mold where it's like, we got to save everybody do your best, and you know what I mean, and like that argument, like you said, sort of puts their characters into perspective pretty great. Mm-hmm. But again, when I was watching, I couldn't help but think, I'm like, okay, I get like your whole vibe, Itadori, like I get where you're coming from, but you guys don't really, all you know is that you're in a detention center looking for a curse that you were told going in neither one of the three or all three of you can handle, like, if it shows up. Yeah. And so you don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know what this thing is capable of. So so in my head, I was like, I kind of want to give it to Fuji, where I'm like, we're in a juvenile detention center. So nobody that's in here is like a spring chicken. Nobody in here is a peach or an angel or a saint. But my thing is like, okay, still, like, you want to be the bigger man, like, you want to do what's right? So I get that, but it's like, dude, you can't even assume the safety of your own life and your comrades' lives who have, like, the ability or the skills to, like, fight off this thing or see it or whatever. Like, how are you worried about saving somebody who's already actually dead? Like, what you're doing is, like, a nice gesture, but, like, that's what it is. It's a gesture. Yeah. And at the end of the day, there was just this weird gap for me where I'm like, we're watching it, and I'm like, why do I feel crazy for thinking, like, why the f*** is kids here? Because, like, for no reason should they be here. We could, again, send Gojo in by himself, send Gojo with the kids, whatever. It just felt weird that it's like, let's do this thing when it's like, the second this dude broke out, like, all they were doing was running. He, split them up and then basically started manhandling Itadori, and Itadori was like, all right, get out of here, and I'm going to let Sukuna, go loose and like tear this thing up. And it's like, so your plan is basically like, I'm gonna be the punching bag, you guys get out, and then like suicide, like kamikaze. But it's like, that's not a plan. Like, that's a last ditch effort. So it just there was this weird moment where, watching the episode, and again, I get like the things they're trying to hit and I understand the story beats that they're hammering on here, but part of me was like, I guess maybe just thinking about it, and shame on me maybe, too realistically, where I'm like, guys, let's think about this situation real quick. Everybody in here is dead if this thing finds us. Everybody. Yeah. You're all going to look like that kid. Yeah. And it's like, we don't have the luxury to worry about dead people. We just don't. We got to not be like that. We got to not be like him.
No, it makes sense. I mean, I know I'm not saying this in a sense that it's like I'm preaching, because you've been at this longer than I have, but like, take this from someone who very early on in their anime journey became incredibly skeptical and hyper realistic in watching a lot of these shows. And that would be something that unfortunately would always tear at me, right? Like, this is the shonen genre, right? You know what I mean? Like, if it was like Seinen, it was something a little bit different. Like, we'd have that play, we'd have that analytical, logical, pragmatic way, like viewing through that lens. But like, we're in a situation here where it's like, this is a shonen, so he's going to go through all the tropes that are needed, right? Where it's like, I'm going to do this in spite of me dying, I'm going to do this in spite of everything, but it's like, and I feel like I don't know if this comes with, being worn down or being less naive, which would be two different things, right? Where it's like, you tend, when you get older, at least in a situation as dire as this, to side with Fuji, right? In that scenario, when you're younger, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe this is just me. My old man spirit is coming through, and like, maybe that's the point of someone like Itadori, right? Is to try and revitalize that, because it's so easy to think like Fuji later on. So fair enough, it makes sense. But it's like, the kicker here is that Itadori also has Sukuna inside of him. So it's like, if worst comes to absolute worst, like, I can press the button, and to be fair, at the end of this episode, things wind up to be maybe even worse for them by the time it's over, to be fair. But, it's like, I'm going to save everyone, I'm going to do everything, the whole thing,
Yeah, I definitely, I obviously, like, I understand what the goal here is. I guess it's just, I've watched Shonen where they've done this scenario better, and again, it kind of harkens back to the whole, them with the chalkboard of exposition, where it's like, don't just hand fist the things that are supposed to happen to move the story, because I've watched Shonen where it's like, even if we did a thing where it's like, all right, This is like a simple protocol mission. That's why we're sending you 3 newbies in. All you got to do is extract a demon. There's like maybe a kid in there. If you find him, save him. But it's like one of you could do it. It's straight basic shit. And then this nigga shows up and he's like not supposed to be here. It's like, now we're in a situation we didn't want to be in, but we didn't know this was a situation. Like we rolled up in here and then the tables turned. Again, a basic way to move the plot of an episode along, but it makes more sense than literally sending these kids into an unknowingly unfair advantage from the gate.
Yeah.
So I get that like this is Shonen. We're not going to get anything different. I'm not holding my breath. I just again, the part of me couldn't help but like feel like guys, try a little bit. Like, don't, you know what I mean? But that's all I'm gonna say on it.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, to be fair, just to throw one in the corner here, I don't believe that they specifically said there will be a special curse in here. I believe it was there is a possibility that a special curse will be in here, and if so, you need to run because this is like a breeding ground. It's a womb, so it's like there's probably more likely to be a more powerful one, but like it's not guaranteed that there's a special one here. I could be wrong on that. That's wording. We just came off of watching it, so you're reading the subtitles. Literally, the difference of a word could make or break this entire conversation. So if anyone has clarification on that, but regardless, they're obviously, to agree with you, they're obviously sending them into a situation where even if they didn't know for certain there was going to be, they had a pretty strong idea that it's like
Kakashi with Naruto's team when they went on their first mission, like just in case.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good example of like how like a difference in the sense that like they run into Zabuza, but they're not expecting to run into Zabuza, which is like they literally just cross paths in that moment, and it's like, okay, we have this whole thing. Yeah, I totally understand your point. So talking about, I guess, towards the latter half of the episode when Sukuna comes out. So first of all, I found it interesting. This is one, again, I hate to keep on relating this to Naruto, but like
there's a lot of similarities, man.
Yeah, I hate to keep doing it. I know I'm so guilty of it, but bear with me here. So I thought it was interesting, like a stark contrast between Sukuna and Kurama is that Sukuna is like, so it's funny, right? Because they're about to fight this thing. He's about to hold him off. And Itadori is like, yo, like, if I die, that means you die, so you probably want to help me, right? Which is like your Naruto Kurama trope. And the guy's like, nah, that's cool. You could drop dead for all I care. Like, I still got 18 fingers out there, dog. Like, you know what I mean? And like, to me, I was like, oh, okay, because that kind of rose the stakes a little bit, because I'm not going to lie. I 100% thought it was going to be that, where it was like Sukuna has to come out, it's like, otherwise, if my host dies, I die along with him. So, which, again, it relates to Naruto in that situation was a thing that got Naruto out of some situations, right? Where it was like, okay, Nine Tails comes out because it's like, if you die, I die. So it was like, so this was interesting because it was like, nah, you're on your own. Yeah. Like, if you use me at all, it's like, I'm actually going to do exactly what you don't want me to do, which really makes it interesting, right? Because it's not like this, like, get out of jail free card when you click it. It's like, okay, I'm going to click it and see what happens. And roll the dice. Like, my back's up against the wall. I literally don't have another option whatsoever. And even sometimes my option would be better served if I died, right? Because then I don't want my friends to die as well. So I thought that was an interesting little wrench that they threw into the game here that you don't see all the time. I appreciated the difference in that he's like, nah, go to hell. Like, you can die. That's fine. So that was very interesting to see. And then, when he goes into the Sukuna mode, we really get to see how powerful Sukuna is and how powerful Gojo is by default, because Gojo puts the ass whooping on him in the first or second episode. So, and this guy puts the ass whooping on this special curse, which apparently you couldn't even carpet bomb out of existence. So, like, power scaling wise, Sukuna's, we get to really see Sukuna at, even a minute level of his strength, and it's impressive, right? Like, we get to see him just basically manhandle this, this curse. Obviously, he could regenerate. I was wondering, actually, if that was going to be a thing. I was like, okay, I'm like 99% sure that he's going to be able to regenerate, right? Because he lost that was a sick shot, by the way, where he cut the knife and the arm straight off within a blink. But I was like, damn, it's going to be awkward if he can't regen. You know what I mean? Imagine he's got one hand the whole show. So he's able to regen, obviously, and just basically whisk off these attacks and whoop this guy's ass. And then, we get to see him say, no, you don't even understand what Jujutsu is. Like, let me show you. And now this is where it's like, okay, here come the hand signs, here come everything. Like, we're jumping in.
And even I again, I was saying earlier, I do love this part. This is probably my favorite part of the episode is when Sukuna comes out, because as much as this dude was putting the real hurt on everybody else in the room, when Sukuna comes out, he's like, oh, dude, you nor this kid like know what the fuck's going on with you. Like none of you know. So like you, and like, to be fair, it looked like it, but effectively this thing was just throwing around sorcery and right, cursed energy.
Yeah.
Just throwing it around, just like Sero beaming everybody left and right. And not until Sukuna comes out and he's like, you guys don't even understand like what fuck it is you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And Itadori, I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. Nigga learned it like 3 seconds ago before he like went to go punch the dude.
Sure.
So I'm sure he didn't even know what he did. But I thought it was interesting because that moment and subsequently the end of this episode also quelled my growing concern, I want to say, that I was worried, or not, I don't want to say worried, but I was, in my head, I had it that I was like, okay, this story, the way this story is going to progress, we have like each Dory, like collecting all these fingers, one by one or however many. And then like he would eat them and progressively Sukuna would get more powerful. And then they would get to a point, I don't know, I think they said 20 fingers in total. So like he would, maybe he gets to like 10 or 15, right? And that's when it's like, oh, like now this dude's like kind of is able to fight back or whatever. But I think it's more of like it's a mental thing, or like it's more of a willpower thing, because I think that's what happens at the end of this episode here when he's like, all right, if you're going to switch back, Brat, like do it now. And then like you just hear silence from Itadori and he's like, oh, this kid's MIA. I think it's because like in the fight when Itadori was in, which is another moment that I really liked, you kind of see his will break a little bit. You see it like his armor chip, and like he just sort of is like, he breaks down, he starts crying, and he's like, I can't believe I'm going to die here. This is going to be my death. Like, is this even a good day? And again, to contrast, it's weird because as much as I was ripping on the beginning half of this episode for doing a lot of too typical, like, safe shonen things, this one I actually really liked, because I feel like, again, in your typical shonen, like, this wouldn't have happened so soon. This is effectively, I mean, technically not, I'll say it's like the second, right? But like, this is one of the first real opponents or enemies Itadori's faced, right? And like, just at this level that either he's at or this thing's at, like, already it's caused him to see such a gap where he's like, I can't do that. Like, this is crazy. And so it was nice seeing him break down, as weird as that sounds, just because it was like, oh, I liked seeing the vulnerability in that character in this moment, and I liked there being acceptance in the fact that like Gojo's here, right? Sukuna's probably like here, right? That this demon thing that they're fighting is like here, and like the three of y'all are down here. Like, so I liked seeing acceptance in the fact that they're like, oh, the gap is just fucking crazy here.
Yeah.
So, and it harkened back to what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, if they're gonna send these three in here, and we know that they're going to meet an enemy that's like leagues above their skill, like, don't just hand fist me some reason how they get out. Like, I want to see them get their asses whooped effectively, and I want them to see that gap. I want the show to portray to me that like, yeah, we're just at the beginning here. There is no, and I think we got to see that in Itadori's moment of reflection there, and that's what I think is happening as to why Sukuna might just, at least for a while, have free reign, because we kind of saw in the little preview for the next episode that he gets into it with Fujimaru.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. I think like Itadori has sort of like lost his will or his confidence a little bit, and because of that, Sukuna, however temporary it may be, because we know we're only on episode 4, he's got to come back eventually. Lost his. So I guess what I'm getting at is I think the footing between who controls his body is a little bit more shaky than the last 3 episodes led you on to believe, which I like.
Yeah. I think it was almost due to this like blissful ignorance that Itadori was able to so easily control him, because he's like, I don't even think he understood the gravity of his situation, therefore he had no fear. He's just like, okay, like they're telling him this, but like this is the kind of kid, one thing goes in one ear and right out the other type thing. And it wasn't until like he's literally faced with death, real like how humiliating and humbling his position is, right? And I think, again, that's where it's like, I can't do this. You need to do this. Where before he's like, no, I could do, like, I'm good. I can do this myself. Like, I don't need you. Like, just go to bed. You know what I mean? But like now he's like, I kind of need you, and like I can't do this on my own. And Sukuna's like, all right, my turn, and then like now it's like Sukuna's got the upper hand in his confidence. So now, I'm assuming Itadori is, through these trials and tribulations, is going to have to regain that sense of confidence and like not lose himself, and believe in himself. And by himself, I mean Itadori, not Sukuna, right? That would be my guess. But yeah, these I wonder how long this this whole thing is going to run, like how, if it's still ongoing, whatever the case might be. If anyone has answers, like they're really big Jujutsu Kaisen stan.
Oh, you mean like the manga?
Yeah, is
Like,
it over? Is it still going?
Yeah,
I'm curious.
I'm pretty
to
sure
know.
it's like still going. I don't know, like
Yeah.
as far as if like the author is like, yeah, I know where I'm gonna end. Like I don't know where it is. But
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because again, like hitting on some of the similar shonen tropes, you know, it's you see like they got another finger already, right? So they have 6. He got the first one he ate is 7. Then he gave him one the second episode or third episode. That's 8. You know, whatever. Like my point is that we're almost halfway there, right? Because we just ripped another finger out of this guy. Mm-hmm. So I guess he's not there until he eats the finger, right? Because Sukuna could not want him to eat it and hide it, etc. So like there are other things at play here, but my point is that I'm curious to see how the pacing is interpreted from the manga, but also in the manga as well. Like how far are they into this? Like, is it a while before we see another finger? Is it like every big encounter do we see one, right? Because that was something with like Demon Slayer, minor spoilers ahead here for anyone who has not read the manga, where it was like one of the gripes, sorry, phone is ringing, one of the gripes that that you know some people had was that it was a little rushed towards the latter half, and for due reason. There was familial problems and stuff from what I've heard, but because of that, it was like every opponent that we saw was like this level opponent, where it was like, okay, here's special. Next is like, here's special. Here's special. And it's like, we're pushed against like the actual death breaking point, and we get a finger each time. I'm just curious to see how this goes. I think the pacing is all right. But right now, I think it's good. In terms of comparison, some stuff we've seen, like I'm not upset about it. I fully understand, I believe, the power system as, as related to what I'm supposed to understand right now. I've got a pretty good grasp on all of the major players, like character-wise. Like, I know where the plot needs to go, but like I also feel like it's not too slow, where it's like I'm satisfied with the fights, and I am thoroughly interested to see where, the next episodes take us. But I don't know if you had any other remarks before.
Yeah, I definitely like this episode, and I think despite my qualms in the first part of the episode, which I still do have, I guess that's my only thing going forward, because I think the pacing is great now as well. I just, I would like to see them, maybe not like lean on like the super heavy hand-fisted tried and true methods, a little bit less, or like, or at the very least, like if you're going to put us in that scenario, like I said, with the whole Kakashi Team 7 Zabuza mission, like give me a reason why we're in this box. Don't just like put them there because you're saying you're going to put them there, because it just feels a little like lazy. Yeah. But like I said, I do like this episode. I love where it leaves our characters, because it does do that sort of nice, feel-good story thing of like putting them in the opposite scenario in which we started. So that's cool. And I am very curious to see how the relationship between Sukuna and Itadori is going to develop, because I'm wondering if at any point, because right now, like we said, and it was stated at the beginning of this episode, like as far as Sukuna is concerned, like everybody here is just a meal. Like he would kill and is trying to kill everybody here. And so as a result, doesn't really have any concern for Itadori or his body or whatever, or his friends or anything. But I'm wondering if at any point, because obviously right now it is very like Itadori and crew versus Sukuna and like whatever. But I wonder if at any point in this trek to get these fingers, Itadori is going to try and befriend Sukuna, right? And maybe try and like either come down his level or meet on equal playing field here and be like, look, this is what you need and this is what you want to do, but like you're in my body now, and this is where we're at. So like, and I don't know, and obviously like that's that's not a good, but I'm wondering how the story, if it does go there, how they would do that, if that's the direction they want to go, if it does become a thing of like maybe they end up like splitting up, you know what I mean? And Sukuna has his own whole body. Yeah, I don't know, but I am definitely very curious to see where we go. Power scaling, I definitely get and understand. I just don't want, I don't know. There's like this weird thing in the back of my mind that I'm like, it could be fine, and it could, just sort of go along the path, I guess, that it's supposed to, where it's like, okay, like A makes sense, B makes sense, C makes sense. But I'm like weirdly kind of worried a little bit that like shit could just spike, or it's like somebody just comes up and then like they can do this thing, and it's like, oh, well, what the fuck? So I guess my thing is like, I just hope that like we take some time and, with the show rather, and like just make sure that like everything is established. I guess that's my my big thing. But I did like this episode.
Yeah. No, I did too. I liked it a lot, and I'm excited to see where we go from here. But anyway, folks, those are our thoughts on episode 4 of Jujutsu Kaisen. Remember, if you guys enjoyed the conversation, if you enjoyed the content, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, sharing with your friends, and commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of our discussion? What did you think about this episode in particular, if you've seen it? And what are your thoughts on Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole? But until next time, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Ninjas are samurais, blazing the kunais. Find me in the leaf of the cloud, screaming out Bankai. We just some ghouls though, who like seeing parts fly.